He woke to the scent of burning sage and damp earth, his head pounding as if the mountains themselves had struck him during the night. And when his eyes finally opened, the first thing he saw was long, black hair spread across his chest like a fallen raven's wing, warm skin pressed against his, steady breathing rising and falling in a rhythm that was not his own. And in that frozen moment between sleep and waking, he did not move, because instinct told him that movement would mean death. And then memory came crashing back like a flood breaking a dam. The chase through the pine forest, the arrows slicing air inches from his ribs, the horse collapsing beneath him, the cliff, the river, the darkness, and now this, waking beside the daughter of the most feared chief in the region, the girl every warrior was forbidden even to look at, let alone touch, her face calm in sleep, lashes resting against her cheeks, a faint scar near her temple, marking her as someone who had lived through violence and survived. And when her eyes opened suddenly and locked onto his, there was no scream, no panic, only a sharp intake of breath and a look that carried more authority than fear, because she knew exactly who he was and what it meant that he was here, alive beside her. And when she whispered his name, spoken like a verdict rather than a question, he understood that fate had already chosen a path for him that could not be escaped. Outside the lodge, morning crept slowly across the valley, mist curling around the wooden poles and painted hides, and somewhere a drum began to beat, low and steady, signaling the dawn gathering of warriors. 321 of them, men whose loyalty to her father was unbreakable, men who would gladly spill blood to protect honor, tradition, and the sacred laws of their people. And as the sound reached them, her expression hardened, because she knew what awaited him if the truth emerged. Yet instead of pushing him away, she pressed her palm to his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath her hand. And in that touch there was a silent choice being made, one that would shake the tribe to its roots, because the law was clear. Any man found with the chief's daughter before her chosen union would be executed at sunrise. But the deeper law, older than stone and fire, spoke of destiny, of bonds forged by the spirits themselves. And as elders began to gather outside and warriors formed ranks with spears planted into the earth, she rose, pulling a ceremonial blanket around her shoulders, her voice calm but unyielding as she told him to stand, to face what was coming with the strength of a man who did not beg, because if he showed fear now, there would be no mercy later. And when they stepped out together into the pale light of dawn, a collective gasp rippled through the camp like wind through tall grass, whispers igniting instantly, eyes narrowing, hands tightening on weapons. And at the center of it all stood her father, the chief, tall and unmoving, his face carved from stone, eyes sharp as flint, taking in the sight of them side by side. And for a long, unbearable moment he said nothing, until finally he raised his staff, and the drums fell silent, the valley holding its breath as he spoke of laws, of betrayal, of blood price. Yet even as his words condemned the man before him, his gaze flickered to his daughter, searching her face for shame, for regret, and finding neither, because she stood straight, unbroken, and declared before all that the spirits had chosen, that the night had bound their fates. And if the tribe honored the old ways, they would hear her claim. And the murmur that followed was not agreement, but confusion, anger, and fear, because honoring such a claim would mean breaking a promise already made, a political marriage arranged to secure peace with a rival clan, and breaking that promise would mean war. And as the chief closed his eyes briefly, weighing the lives of many against the life of one man, the sun finally crested the ridge, casting light over the assembled warriors. 321 silhouettes standing ready, not for a wedding feast, but for judgment. And in that light, the man understood that survival would not be enough, that love alone would not save him, and that before another dawn rose, he would either become worthy of her, worthy of the tribe, or become a story told to children as a warning. And if you want to know what happens when love stands against law, when one man faces an army not with a blade, but with destiny itself. Then make sure you subscribe to this channel, because the next chapter reveals the trial that no outsider has ever survived, and the choice that will decide whether this dawn ends in blood or a wedding that will echo through history. The valley did not erupt into violence at once, because tradition demanded patience even when blood cried out for it. And so the chief lifted his staff again and declared the trial of worth, a rite so old that even the elders spoke of it in lowered voices. A trial meant not to save a man's life, but to prove whether his death would shame the spirits. And as the warriors shifted, 321 spears glinting in the newborn sun, the man stepped forward alone, stripped of weapons, stripped of protection, carrying nothing but the truth of what he felt, while the chief's daughter stood behind him, her chin raised, eyes unblinking, knowing that every breath he took from this moment onward was a battle. The trial began with endurance, forcing him to cross the river barefoot while warriors hurled stones and insults alike, each step tearing skin, each breath burning, yet he did not fall. And when blood stained the water, the elders exchanged glances, because pain without surrender was the first sign the spirits might be watching. Next came truth, spoken before the fire, where lies were believed to anger the ancestors themselves. And when asked why he dared touch what was forbidden, he did not speak of fate or accident, but of choice, of seeing her not as a chief's daughter, but as a woman strong enough to stand between clans, brave enough to defy fear. And those words carried farther than he intended, settling into the silence like sparks, because even warriors understood courage when they heard it. Then came the final test, the one no outsider had survived, the walk of spears, where 321 warriors formed a corridor, spear points lowered, forcing him to walk through without flinching, without running, knowing that a single sign of weakness would invite death. And as he stepped forward, the drums began again, slower now, each beat matching his heart. And with every step he felt the air move as spear tips brushed his skin, some drawing blood, others stopping inches from his eyes. Yet he did not raise his hands, did not bow his head, because fear would have been easier than dignity. And when he reached the end, still standing, the valley erupted not in cheers, but in stunned silence, broken only when the chief's daughter walked to his side and placed the ceremonial mark of union upon his chest, a mark she had no right to place, yet placed anyway, daring the spirits themselves to disagree. The chief watched them for a long time, the weight of war, honor, and legacy pressing down on him. And then he did something no one expected. He knelt, not to the man, but to the choice his daughter had made, declaring that a union forged through trial and truth was stronger than one forged through fear. And with that declaration, the warriors reversed their spears, planting them into the earth in a sign not of surrender, but of acceptance. And as the sun climbed higher, songs replaced drums, tension melted into awe, and what had begun as a dawn of execution became a wedding witnessed by warriors, elders and spirits alike, a wedding that would be spoken of long after those 321 men turned to dust. And if this story moved you, if you felt the weight of that dawn and the power of a choice made against all odds, then subscribe to this channel, because more legendary stories of love, courage, and destiny are waiting, and the next one may challenge everything you believe about fate itself.